everybody, it's Kat here, and today I'm going to be doing something a bit differently than my normal jujitsu stuff. Today I'm going to be interviewing a special guest, a dear friend of mine, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So let's get to it. So, how are you feeling today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your profession and all that. So go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My first name is Richard Lale. Richard Lale is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I'd be a dick. Richard Lale, all hail Richard Lale. The full name is Richard Lale Lillard. I am known as the gentleman psychic. I'm a psychic medium. I used to be a psychic small, but I gained some weight. I'm well known in the paranormal world. I was on Ghost Adventures twice. I'm a paranormal investigator. I read tarot. I do seances. I do magic. I do all kinds of things.
Beautiful. Love it. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start with the interview questions. Is that okay? All right, interview
Sure.
questions. Okay. So, how did you first become interested in the occult?
Well, that's kind of a nuanced story. So I grew up Pentecostal. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up Pentecostal, and Pentecostalism is different than mainstream Christianity in the sense that they do believe in spirits and ghosts and they call it demons. I don't believe in demons. I don't believe in angels. I do believe in energies. Anyway, so there was that, and I was introduced to that as at an early age, and then when I was really young, I was I became obsessed with the Addams family. And it started when I was about 10 years old.
Mhm.
My parents were older, so they would go to doctor's offices who were for people in their 50s, 60s. Um, and what is there for a kid to read but the New Yorker magazine? And I found that I loved Charles Addams, and I was just so intrigued by the dark, the macabre, and I loved dark cartoons like the Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat. I always thought that was quite, the magic that was behind that. And then in the 90s, they were gearing up for the 1991 release of The Addams Family. So they began to play all throughout 1990. They began to play the Addams Family series on television,
Mhm.
and I was obsessed. And then, of course, I watched The Addams Family, and then The Addams Family Values, and I felt seen. But I even as a kid, I loved my favorite characters in anything. They were the witches. They were the Brujas. They were the sorcerers. It was Vincent Price. So I started when I was really young, and of course that led to where I am now.
That is beautiful. Like I get it. I get it entirely. I was obsessed with witches and all that stuff, and the joke, a whole, spells and curses for Wednesday Adams. I love it. I loved every minute of that. Yeah, I get it entirely. All right. So next question. What was your first paranormal experience? Like, what happened?
First paranormal experience. I mean, that one is a little bit, that's a little hard because the
Mhm.
paranormal is such a broad spectrum.
Mhm.
Um, it's a broad spectrum. I mean, as a kid, there were specters that I would see. People outside that weren't there that others couldn't see. I would know things. I would sit down, and someone would come in the room, and I would say, "Oh, this, and this," and they, they would go, "How did you know that?" Or I would experience deja vu quite frequently.
Mhm.
Um, we did move when I was about, well, almost 6. We moved to a little town in Missouri, and it was down on the river. Um, I had an experience in the house. Doors would open and close. I would hear sounds, and then when I was about, I have a guardian spirit, and I was about 10 when my mother forgot to pick me up from school, and I walked along and I started getting scared. It was only a mile, three quarters of a mile, not even a full.
Mm,
And it was a long driveway, and I was afraid of lions and tigers and bears. And then I heard this voice that said, "Hold my hand, and I'll guide you home." So I walked home, holding this imaginary hand, and I got home, and my mother she realized the time. What do I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Why are you doing that? And then I told her. Now she thought that it was Jesus. It wasn't Jesus. It was actually the woman in red, but that's another story for another day.
mhm.
So a lot of different paranormal things.
Okay. That sounds like a really cool experience, actually. Does. Let's see. What traditions or schools of thought do you primarily follow? So sorry, that you yeah, primarily follow.
Well, you know what? I am an independent.
Mhm,
I I am not. I had identified before as a Satanist, but I am not. I am not. I am not a member of the Church of Satan. I'm not a member of the Satanic Temple for reasons.
mhm,
I am an independent, so I prefer to call myself a deistic diabolist. Diabolism is it's a 19th century term that sort of made the devil a little bit more humane, a little bit more genteel, yes, but a little bit more understanding as to the plight of mankind. It was a literary term. It wasn't it wasn't really an idea or a thought, but in the 21st century it can be.
mhm,
Most of my spiritual isms, I suppose, are from independent study and thought, and I weave a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism, even dare I say a little Christianity. Even though I am not a Christian, I am
mhm.
in fact a diabolist.
That is awesome, like, I get it entirely, like, I pull from several different things, but that's because I look at my background and I go from there and I just see what I can do. I do my history on my ancestors and all that stuff, and I feel like that's beautiful, like, do what resonate do what works for you, do what you resonate with, you know what I mean? Of course, do it safely and do it and do your research and all that stuff. Let's see. What does the term occult mean to you?
Well, occult just means hidden knowledge.
Mhm,
And the thing about occultism and hidden knowledge is that there is a lot. As someone who wants to believe as many true things as I can and not believe as many untrue things. I want to find out what is true. So I read, I study, I absorb it like a sponge. So it basically just means hidden knowledge. And I am never arrogant enough to say I know everything, that I know the way things are going, and I know top and bottom and right and left and good and evil. There's a lot that I do not know. And so I accept that I will never know, and that is okay. It's part of the human experience. So
mhm.
occultism is basically uncovering hidden knowledge.
Like, I totally get that. Like, I've been practicing for a long time, and like, I always live by that phrase: "Always a teacher, forever a student." Always, because you are always learning new things. 100%. Like,
Absolutely.
there's times where, like, before, like 5 years ago, I don't know the stuff that I do now. Like, you're always consistently growing in your practice and growing in all the things that you do, learning to hone those little things, those little abilities and stuff like that all over the place. Like it's always growing and growing and growing. There's never like stop. Even when we take our breaks, it's still you're finding out more about yourself. You're finding, like the mundane over magical. It's everything. You're always growing no matter what it is. Like that's just how it
Absolutely.
is. Let's see. Mm, do you have any specific tools that you go to? Like grimoires or tarot, runes, sigils, whatever, like that you
Well,
do daily.
I do a lot of there's a lot. So the main thing that I use quite frequently, I do the tarot cards. I like tarot, but I actually prefer my oracle deck. I teach tarot. I love tarot. I
Mhm.
love the history of it, but I like the fact that in my Lenormand deck, it doesn't have a direct story, and I don't have to think now. the fool goes on his journey and he meets the magician, and like I don't have to put the story in order. Four of swords, six of cups. Like I don't have to think where it falls in the timeline or the story. I just lay it ahead and I trust my intuition. So I go through that the most. I do like my divining rods. I do have the pendulum. I love the Ouija board, as controversial as it may be. I've
Mhm,
gotten some great results out of the Ouija board.
mhm,
Um, I do read. I have a big library of occult books. So I have some that date back hundreds of years. So I do like to read them. I can't think of any titles right offhand,
mhm.
but I do have some that are over there.
I know that there's actually a practitioner. She actually made a tarot deck that's specifically for just trust your intuition. I love that. Like seriously, that's all really really is you're just trusting your intuition and what you feel, etc. Of course, they have their own structure, but
Sure.
your intuition tells you everything. Like that's why for me, whenever I read multiple cards. I don't just read one because it's like a story. You're telling the story of like what this is trying to say because every little thing counts. Personally, you know what I mean. And I'm sure a lot of other people
Absolutely.
do it. Let's see. Ooh, what books or authors have influenced your path the most?
What books or authors have influenced my path? Well, Aleister Crowley is one.
Mhm,
Did I agree with everything? No, of course I didn't agree with everything. Take it with a grain of salt. But he was, for his day, he was brilliant. Of course, Anton Szandor LaVey. Take it with a grain of salt. Um, as I aforementioned, the diabolism of the 19th century,
mhm,
Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley, Lord Byron. Um, oh goodness, what is his name? I can't remember. Voltaire. Reading Voltaire,
mhm,
that influences me. Even though Edgar Allan Poe didn't associate, he wasn't called an occultist. He had no sort of drive that way. He inspires me. Marie Corelli was an author in the 19th century. She was a Christian, but her writings were brilliant. Um, so yeah, a lot of these inspire me.
heck yeah. Let's see. How do you feel about the commercialization or tenderness of the occult aesthetics?
Well, you know what? I don't mind. I don't have a problem with it.
Mhm,
I really don't mind. Um, I just say whatever they do, make it beautiful. I don't care. I don't care what they do. Just make it beautiful. Um, is it commercialization? It on one hand, it's visibility and it helps people to develop their own aesthetic.
mhm,
I as an odd kid, I collected little Adams Family figurines, that I could, and they were kind of cheesy. I did like some of the Halloween things earlier on, but we're talking I was 12, so
mhm.
it's fine. Just make it beautiful, whatever it may be.
Okay. Let's see. How did you feel about being on Ghost Adventures?
Ghost Adventures was great. I was on Ghost Adventures twice. Zach Baggins is wonderful. He's a great friend. What I loved when we did the Pasadena Ritual House is that he
Mhm,
understood antiques, he understood aesthetic, and he said, "Whoa, this is what I want my museum to feel like." So, folks, guys, when you have to move things, don't drag it. Pick it up. Pick it up. Don't drag it. These are beautiful antiques. So that was really lovely. And then, of course, I during the Los Feliz murder mansion, I became possessed by a spirit. And I realize now it wasn't as bad as I was afraid. Like
mhm.
I had talked in my head, but yeah, it was great.
That yeah, it was really cool watching too. I was like, "What?" That was really cool. I do remember that one part when you rang the bell and you can see the stuff. And it shows it works. It's real. Like people don't realize this stuff is very real. Um,
Absolutely.
all right, so let's see. What is something you would tell your younger self?
Well, that's a funny story. I do actually talk to my younger self. It's a funny thing
Mhm,
because time Time is an illusion, and we think it goes in one direction. We think that the past influences the future, and yes, but sometimes the future influences the past. That happened. I found that out through a dream and through study. But anyway, what would I tell my younger self? Be fabulous, make it pretty, be yourself, make it pretty. That's what I would say.
I get it. I get it 100%. Let's see. Hmm. Let's see. Let's do two more and then I'll let you go. Is that okay?
Sure, of course.
All right. So let's see. What advice would you give to someone just beginning their journey into the occult, into witchcraft, or whatever? The
The
spiritual,
number one thing, trust your intuition. Trust your intuition, trust your intuition, trust it.
100%.
It is there for a reason. And if you have a gut feeling, I don't like that person, I don't want to go down that way, I don't want to do this, I don't want to eat that, don't. Just don't. Just don't. Just don't. Just don't. Trust your intuition. Um, that's the number one thing. Also, take it with a grain of salt and enjoy it. Laugh. Don't be so strict and rigid that and don't get arrogant. You know, we're all on different journeys. Don't get arrogant. We don't know everything. We will never know everything.
Yeah, like there was even a time where, there's times where you're gonna be wrong. You're not supposed to be right 100% of the time. You're not supposed to know all this stuff 100% of the time because
Exactly.
you're not supposed to. If we did, life would be boring. All that. Of course.
Mhm.
All right. One last thing. Any new adventures that we should be aware of coming up?
Well, I am going to be in Scotland in 2026. You can find that at tracelesstours.com, and then it's the Sacred Tour, Sacred Tours.
Mhm.
That if you are curious about coming to Scotland, you can come with me to Scotland next year. Um, Other than that, I don't really I have a website, thegentlemanpsychic.com, but to be fair, I get inundated with emails and I have 500,000 sitting in my inbox. So I don't really check my emails. The best thing to do is to find me on Instagram, to find me on Facebook, to find me on YouTube, the medias of social, because I feel very much like a millennial in that, is that it's always there on my phone.
Mhm.
But I don't check my email.
All right. I thank you for having me and thank you for being here with me and thank you for this interview. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure,
Mhm.
friend. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
As you guys can see, all this. And, yeah, just have a lovely day, everybody. Well, bye bye.
Thank you.